Yeah, that'd be great. Tell me what a field CTO is and your background.
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been doing networking cybersecurity for about 20 years. Did my degree in cybersecurity once upon a time. Just to tie into the phishing thing and the whole fraud piece. I actually got into this because of credit card fraud and scams and everything that was going on.
Okay.
In Toronto, where I live, we have something called a Take Your Kids to Work Day in grade 9.
Okay.
But way back then is when I first got introduced to the whole credit card fraud and debit card fraud, and so that kind of got me interested and ended up into cybersecurity. So yeah, I've done sort of all sorts of.
Just before you go on, so why was that linked to taking your kids to school?
My sister happened to work in the fraud department at a bank in Toronto, so I went to her office for the day, and they had a whole day planned for the kids, and it was actually really cool. Like, they did a lot of stuff, and they even faked an incident, like a live incident, because you don't know what you're going to get that day, but they did a whole role play thing, and it was really interesting to see how people try to scam the system.
Okay.
So I figure, as long as people are trying to steal money, we'll be in jobs. So
absolutely. Okay. So all right, interesting. Thank you. Yeah. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. So I worked at a bank for a couple of years at a school. Ended up working on the vendor side using the product I was using at the bank. I've been on the vendor side ever since. So I've done sales engineering, architecture type work. I've done sales for a bit, did some marketing kind of roles. Eventually graduated into leadership roles where building teams, running teams, again on the vendor side.
Yes.
And now as a field CTO, I basically take all that experience, and my job touches the whole customer life cycle. So from everything from marketing and new customer acquisition, like prospecting, getting the messaging out there, doing stuff like this, which is stuff I really enjoy, where you get to talk about industry stuff and just get to learn a whole lot of things, get exposed to a whole lot of things, which I really like. And so then customer acquisition. I'm not hands-on with proof of concepts and stuff, but I guide that process with understanding business value. What are the customer needs? How does that turn into what we do? I get a broad view of our entire global customer base, so I can take different things I'm seeing in different parts and build trends and understand where we need to go directionally. So that's where that's the product side of the house, working with the product management team and the development team to make sure that what they're building matches what we're seeing, and connect dots where dots need to be connected. And then throughout the whole customer, they maintain a customer with us. So the customer success side, again, making sure they're seeing value, making sure they feel connected. So I'm a mile wide, but an inch deep, and I can go deeper in different areas depending on what the business needs.
Nice. Do you like that scope, that overview of the whole thing?
Yeah, I love it. I get bored pretty quickly, so I get to do a bunch of different things. So hey, if this is stuck, the thing I've always found in different roles is that like a sales role is a good example. If your opportunities are stuck and ultimately you're waiting on the customer to do something, sometimes you got to sit and wait, and that's annoying. So while something's waiting and cooking, I can go do something else. It's a little challenging when everything's boiling at the same time, but we got a great team to support, so that's always good.
Nice. Okay. I like that. So obviously with your global customer base, what are you seeing that's changing in your role or just in general in the space?
Yeah, I think AI is everywhere, right? With the whole buzzwords, as you were talking about when we first got on here. AI is affecting everything. It's kind of like the cloud revolution years ago, right? There was a lot of folks who said, "I'm not putting my stuff in the cloud." Well, guess what? As soon as you're on email or you're using a phone, you're going to be on the cloud.
Yeah.
And now AI is doing a very similar thing. Whereas if you're using any piece of technology, there's going to be some sort of AI embedded into that, whether you like it or not. And you can choose to not do it. And I think I've seen some people, very traditionalist cybersecurity people say, "I'm not going to do anything AI." So they are removing it from their operating system. They are not using certain types of phones there. And it's incredibly difficult. You are so disconnected from society when you're doing something like that, because that's just where everything is. So really, I think one of the things we need to learn from before, from our previous experiences with cloud, with blockchain, with whatever the latest thing was, is how do we implement that securely? How do we, as consumers of these things, whether it's a business consumer or an end customer, like a personal consumer, you need to be able to to show that, hey, we're not going to be doing something that isn't safe. And I think
Right.
we've built up enough, like with the whole scams, and again, to tie to this podcast with phishing and stuff, we've gotten as a society better aware of scams.
Yeah.
And so being able to say, get ahead of that curve and say, hey, you know, this is cool. I can make a photo of myself and you know, my friend skydiving on a mountain cliff or whatever. But you know, and it's cool.
Yeah.
What are you giving up to do that? And I think generally we're getting better. We're not there yet, but you know, if we can show that, hey, I'm not just going to give up my information to show what I'm going to look like in, you know, as an 80-year-old. You know, like you got to think a little bit as we're doing this stuff. And so, you know, it ties in well to the whole phishing aspect, and the way scams are evolving, right?
It is. It's interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Part of my thesis actually I wrote in school was on phishing scams and quantifying.
Really?
Yeah, quantifying qualitative vulnerabilities. So, you know, so when you're looking at it, so part of that, the whole scam was like, look, scams are very obvious. You can tell there's typos, there's, you know, grammatical errors. Nowadays, AI writes pretty good. So you have to be able to identify, wait a second, this is too good. Which ties into the topic I was going to talk about the phone phishing when we're ready to get to that. But yeah, so I talked a lot.
No, it's interesting because it was, and I always thought that the scammers of old made the emails really bad, so they'd only target the most gullible of people. And I've seen that being extended now to some of these Facebook scams where it's a AI generated image of a child with his like, oh, I just whittled this whatever, nobody loves me, please help. And then everyone who's commenting on it is a target, because if they're like, oh, that poor kid, like I send him my love, those are the new targets. And so they've sort of changed the way you're pulling out. But then it happens, it's not just, you know, it's not just gullible. Everyone can be impacted by it. You know, even if you think you're incredibly intelligent, you know, even you, I mean, I'm talking about myself now. I've almost been scammed once, and looking back, I was like, how did that happen? But it's a series of slow, pressure-based, time-sensitive things. So yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, and it's no longer just the, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince and, you know, send me $1,000 and I'll send you $1 million back. You could do this, like you're saying, if an AI generated image and a GoFundMe of, hey, you know, $1 helps, 50 cents helps, $10 help. You get 1 million people giving you $1, you got $1 million.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and you know, and generally people try to be nice. They're like, hey, you know, I want to help. I know this is a potential for being a scam, so I'm not going to give you $100, but am I willing to risk $1? Maybe. And you know, it's the season of giving right now, and so you know, it's possible that you can grow a pretty good wide attempt with you know, phishing attempt with some good information. You don't necessarily even need credentials and stuff then, because if you can just get people to send you a GoFundMe or a Venmo or whatever it is these days people use to send money, there's ways to cash in.
Huh. Yeah, because we're focused on mainly enterprise, you know, invoice fraud, change the details, send an email, say, oh, can you just pay this? Someone's distracted. But you know, you've got families, you know, this, you know, I was biking in Indonesia. I fell off my bike, broke my leg. I need $500, grandma. You know, like like that kind of thing will become, and that's the voice, as we, you know, we'll get onto. But the voice used to be the thing that you could control, or video. You know, if you got on a video call, and this is a good instance of it. We've never met each other. You know, I've got a pretty white background. You've got an AI generated generated background, but you know, we trust each other. We met on LinkedIn, but that's the extent of what we've done to make sure that we're talking to each other. And you just take it for granted. It's like, okay, Irfan's there. Yep. All right. Let's talk, you know? So it's, yeah.
And that's the thing, especially like in roles like both of ours, right? Where we're customer facing, you've never met these people before. You know, okay, maybe they have connections in common, maybe not. But you see these kinds of scams show up all the time of people who, you know, have big LinkedIn accounts, and so you then have to check. Okay, well, is their data all filled in? How many connections do they have? Have they been active? Right, and you look at the posts that they're posting. Is it look generated or not? And it's tough to figure that out. Absolutely.
And everyone's in a rush. You check quickly. You go through it. So, but yeah, let's. You know, I said this would be 15, 20 minutes, but I'd love to hear this story. So you told me.
Yeah, no problem.
more around, yeah.
So, yeah. So the one that actually caught me off guard, like right in line with what we're talking about, is so I'm in Canada, and we don't have a whole lot of cell phone companies or internet companies. There's a handful, and you kind of jump between a couple depending on what the greatest deal of the Black Friday is at that year. And so the company I was with at the time, this was maybe 2 years ago, they actually, this was the legitimate portion of it. They called me and said, "Hey, we actually want, as a valued customer, we want to offer you a discount on your existing subscription." I'm like, this is a scam. Nobody offers you a legitimate discount on a scam. And he's like, no, seriously, it's not a scam. We want to just thank you for being a loyal customer. We want to give you an extra $20 off. So I was like, okay, let me pull the thread here. There was nothing sketchy about it. I didn't have to give him any information. I just had to say yes.
Okay.
And my bill was $20 cheaper a month. And I was like, you made a customer for life. Like, this is amazing. How did you do that?
Yeah.
Now they set me up, because then I got a call a year later with a very similar talk track. Hey, we're calling from your telephone company, and they happen to know who I was with. And I think you can look it up these days.
Yeah.
And it was very targeted. Like, hey, we're calling you from this company. We want to offer you a deal or whatever. I'm like, hey, this is familiar. Now I have a concept of this being legitimate because this actually happened and it was true. And so now the scammer is like, okay. And I was like, okay, yeah, hey, I'm interested. You want to offer me another discount? Oh, yes. You already did one. I'm down for another one. And so again, I'm like, okay, let me pull the thread. Okay, let me confirm your name. Okay, already they're asking for more information than they needed last time. Okay, confirm your address. Okay, I mean, you can find out where I live pretty easily, fine. Okay, we're going to send you a PIN to your email. And I was like, okay, some companies do this.
Okay.
I know, like, well, some banking institutions, when you call them, they have your phone number on file. They will text you on that number and say, unless you specifically asked for this, don't pass it on. And so I was like, okay, send me a text. Let's see. So I got the text, or it was an email. I think I got the email. And this is where I caught it. And it was, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have had it, because they were asking me to give them a code to authenticate. The email that came in was, hey, did you reset your password? If so, here's the code to authenticate that. And I was like, I got you. Because the scam, it didn't match. What they said did not match. So they were trying to hijack my account by resetting my password, but they needed my two-factor authentication. And had I not paid attention to what the top line of the email said and just gave them the code, I would have been scammed.
Because also with like iPhones now, it like can auto copy the code from text or auto fill it. Sometimes you look at the text, you don't read it, you just see the code, you go boom, and go.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple things there. So timing. So they knew that they'd sort of, well, we're giving them a lot of credit. So maybe they knew that this thing happened the same time last year. Maybe it was coincidental, but the timing seems very good. And they knew that this company was giving deals, and then knew that they needed probably not to get too much information, but just enough. And so, interesting. Okay.
That was honestly the best one I've seen. They almost had me. Like, I was very close to giving it up there. And again, I've been doing cybersecurity for 20 years, and I almost got caught.
Right.
So you can imagine that it's better.
Yeah. So what do you? So that, I mean, that's a really interesting one. What are you seeing? Do you think that kind of thing will happen more in terms of, because the timing is really interesting to me. So one of my old colleagues started the company. It was their first week, and we were running a program together. They wanted to, impress everyone, as you did, but we're with the client, we're doing things. They get a text that says, the client, we want to give out Amazon vouchers for Christmas from the CEO. And then all of a sudden they're like, all right, and they run out of the building, disappear, come back an hour and a half later. I'm not paying attention because got lots going on. And then they come back and they bought 500 pounds of vouchers, scratched it off, sent it to the CEO. And then everyone's like, well, no, I mean, we would never do that. But they had just started 2 days before. So the number must have just been registered because it was the business phones. They knew they just started. Maybe it was on LinkedIn as well that they'd started. So then the text was pressure plus wanting to look good in front of your colleagues and boss. and middle of the workday, plus not knowing the culture, not knowing that the director would send a text like that or not. So that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, and so those are actually, I mean, those are very common, but I actually knew I made it big when I got impersonated for that. I had a colleague in my last company, and because my title was managing director, I had a director-ish title, and it was somebody reached out and said, "Hey, did you ask me to buy gift cards?" I was like, "No, but I made it big. I was so excited that I was getting impersonated. I've become famous." It only happened one time, but I think they hit 2 or 3 people, because it was we had to send out a company-wide notice saying, "Hey, if you're getting this, don't fall for that." But I was glad they checked, because they're like, "Hey, wait a second." And again, it was just awareness of the situation, because it was I don't remember the area code that the text came from, but they're like, "That's not a Canadian area code, and I don't know where in Canada you are, but you live in Canada, and so that didn't line up. So what's going on here? I just wanted to make sure." And I was like, "Good thing you did," because again, somebody who's albeit that person was a junior cybersecurity professional, they maybe had a couple of years of experience fresh out of school, but they were vigilant about that. They're like, "Hey, I should verify this, because I don't know that. I mean, I've maybe talked to Irfahn once, twice, and now he's asking me to buy gift cards. It doesn't make sense."
Yeah, it doesn't add up. But it could have easily gone the other way. That's it's fascinating to me. I mean, the behavioral stuff behind it, and timing, plus our friend says I need to do this. All right, I'm gonna go do it. What else are you seeing? How else are people protecting against this? So the system we're building is, you're certifying that you're talking to the person through mobile app, KYC, know it's the person. Like, how else are people tackling it? A lot in-app or, AI tech, but they're still behavioral. So what have you seen that's interesting?
Yeah, I haven't seen much protections from it, to be honest. Like, it's outside of it being fairly obvious, or one of the traditional, again, going back to the 2000s, where it was the Nigerian prince. But I mean, you can't even do that now, because legitimately Nigeria is buying technology. So it's tough, right? Not to get into geopolitical stuff, but it's tough. Like, unless it's something obvious, or you notice a glitch, or you can verify through a contact. The biggest thing for me, being on the vendor side as well, is about meeting people. Because thankfully, so far, outside of watching too many Mission Impossible movies, you still can meet somebody face to face and look them in the eye and shake their hand, which is rare these days, especially post COVID. Like, a lot of people are still meeting virtually, but at least for some of the larger opportunities and times where companies are going to spend big money with a vendor, or doing something where it's even within the company of gotta buy gift cards or things like that. Like, hey, I met this person, and I kind of have exchanged a cultural, or there's a dynamic there where we've understood how that person speaks, understood how that person interacts, and when there's a deviation from that, ultimately humans have a gut feel, like, hey, that I've worked with this person, I've talked to this person, I met this person, that doesn't line up, let me just check. And that, taking 5 seconds to go and check, it can save a lot of headache.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we've been talking about, is that behavior change that sort of needs to happen. So I mean, the reason it will work is that people will check, but if they don't check, then there's no way to protect against it. So you still need to sort of, I believe, create a culture of it's okay to call out your seniors. Like, you're never going to get in trouble if you say, "Hey, can I just double check this?" And especially right at the beginning, when you join an organization and you go, "Okay, we are going to make sure that every interaction is certified," whatever it is. And you'll never get in trouble calling out the CEO, because that's the kind of thing that, it's like that famous, you've read about the South Korean pilots who crashed into the side of a mountain. You ever read this? So the South Korean, most of the pilots were ex-army, so very hierarchical, would always cede to seniority. And they were flying one night, and they were up at 4,000 feet, but the senior pilot thought it was 40,000 feet, or 3,500 and 35,000. And so the pilot who was in charge, the captain, was all fine, and the first mate on the black box, instead of saying we are at 4,000 feet, they were like, oh, this instrument's been a bit weird recently, should we check it? Or, oh, the fog, it's tough to tell. So never said we're at the wrong altitude. And they flew into the side of a mountain and killed everybody on board because they never called out the captain. So then it's that all of their pilots had to go through this behavioral and cultural shift to say it's okay, you have to. And so, but that permeates all over, right? The director's busy, I don't want to go and ask them stupid questions, so I'll just do the thing, because if it's not, and so how do you make that okay, especially in a global dispersed business where people are different time zones? And I don't have the answer, but it's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, the culture is definitely shifting across. So I've worked for a few companies now over the years, and the ones that have that, hey, fall in line type of mentality. I mean, if people fall in line, it works sometimes, I guess. I don't know. It was never for me. I never really lasted long in those places. And so, organizations, and again, at Backbox, I've known the leadership team here for quite a while. We've worked in other stops together, and having that culture where you can, hey, it's literally an open door. I know people say open door policy. I did work for a company one time where the CEO said, no problem. He would meet all the new hires and say, reach out to me anytime. I did, and he did not respond.
It's one way you can reach out. I'm not going to reply.
yeah, exactly. It's immediate communication. But when you have an organization where it's invited to have that conversation, to say, hey, open door. You got to be respectful, but go ahead and say what it is, what you think, and it's welcomed. And it's like, okay, hey, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. It's a different idea. Let's talk about it. Why do you think that idea is the way you think it is? And if you can talk through it, you can convince it, then yeah, the best ideas win, and those are the companies that are the most successful.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that command, and it works for some people, but not not me. All right, so to wrap up, what are you excited for in 2026? What do you think is going to shift, or is there anything coming up that you're like, this is going to be huge? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think 2026 it's going to be an interesting year. That I think we're far enough from COVID now where things have gotten back to normal. There's a bit of quantitative easing in the market with kind of some of the U.S. and geopolitical stuff that's going on. But interest rates are kind of staggering off, so people are willing to spend a bit more. And when spending happens, fun things happen. When everything's kind of tight and you can't really do much, it's a little boring and stressful. But as soon as organizations are spending, means people are making money, people are them spending, and kind of it reverberates through the entire industry. And so I'm excited to see projects that were previously stalled move forward. Selfishly, that allows us to be busier, which is fun. And then the way things are going from again, tying back to the whole phishing aspect, people getting in front of people again. I think you've seen kind of in the industry where AI is not necessarily the be all end all as it used to be, where people are like, I gotta put it in ChatGPT and figure it out. I gotta put it in Gemini and figure it out. People are actually thinking, they're like, wait a second, I still need to be the expert. I can't just rely on this thing to tell me everything, right? You see those memes on Instagram and stuff where it's like, so-and-so said hi to me. How do I respond?
Yeah.
Like, hello. You actually have to.
How are you?
And I think that stupidity is kind of getting out with kind of the back half of this year. And so you'll see people get smarter, use it smarter, realize, how do we leverage tools like AI and other things to make our life better and easier, as opposed to just relying on it to live our life. And there's a delicate difference in there, which hopefully the listeners pick up on and we see more of as we move forward. Perfect.
This has been great. Thank you. As I said, first guest, great way to wrap up 2025. And yeah, thank you again. So have a wonderful